Hey, what up? Fashion critic Alistair here to talk to you about ballet tudo shorts again. Don't know what to title this. I'm struggling to get my brain about everything I want to say, and it comes across with, like, we got three working titles. They don't make them like that anymore. Reebok sucks, and did anyone give a shit about your clothes? And this has come from my inability to articulate exactly what pissed me off about, what just rubs me the wrong way about seeing lower level, not necessarily a lower level, like a local MMA organization insisting on fighting uniforms. So, we gotta go way back to find the source of Alistair's dislike of this practice. And we got to go all the way back to the early days. We got to think about the cultural influences upon what a martial artist wears in no holds barred or mixed martial arts competition. So, way back when, it's martial arts uniforms. So these are your jiu-jitsu gi, your karate gi, Muay Thai shorts for those guys, and then you've got your other option, which sort of comes up later, but we'll bring up now, which is striped spandex bodybuilding shorts. For example, these here, available from Gentleman's Combatives Custom and Gear, if you want a pair. Anyway, sometimes you'll see fighters wearing those. Those are all sort of stopgap measures or representative measures of something to wear in a fight for this new sport that is developing. And during this time, it's a cultural mix and there's all sorts of different people coming on, but none of these items are particularly well suited to the art. Your Muay Thai shorts sort of fall down the moment there's grappling. We all remember seeing Johnny Rhodes' ass in UFC 2. Like, stuff isn't built for the sport. And then again, things aren't built for the sensibilities of the audience that are watching the sport. They don't want to watch guys in Speedos because they're red-blooded Americans. The Japanese are way ahead of us on this one. They're watching guys in Speedos quite happily because rather than emerging from martial arts competition and that sort of macho culture, it's emerging from pro wrestling and that sort of macho culture. And guys are wearing, like, you got the Shudo guys in full tights, and which are pro wrestling tights, and you got the Pancrase guys and the Rings guys in pro wrestling trunks. That direction is there. In the West, however, we have to wait until late 97, or I think it's early 97, for someone in Brazil to come up with the marvelous idea of the Valet Tudo trunk, which is, of course, there's a great little short film made by the people at Bad Boy about where the idea for the Valet Tudo trunk came from. It pretty much was the guys fighting in Speedos that are falling apart or they're too small. They need something else, so they made it a little bit bigger so it stays on the leg and your ass cheek doesn't come out, and they made it a bit tougher. So this is out of, I believe, it's a 4-way stretch. So it's a cotton jersey of some variety or another, cotton spandex. Like, this is definitely just spandex down their edges, whereas I'm not quite sure what the actual stuff's made of. The exact knit escapes my brain. I can't just feel it and go, yeah, it's definitely this. But, it's a stretch spandex. It hugs your ass if you're built like a Brazilian man on steroids. Looks great, and because it's skin tight, there isn't very much to grab onto, and so it is fitting for the sport with the rules that the sport has. And although it wasn't red and white originally, the original pairs are black with just the Bad Boy eyes, and then there's the black and white banding, which these aren't Bad Boy, these are a pair of mine. That's the classic look. That's what a martial artist wears. And aesthetically, you have influences from surf culture on this, because it's based on a sungoi, on a speedo. You have the martial arts culture of the time. You have the sport, it's built for the sport. And then you have the other influences that are on the sport itself. So people take the garment of the Valet Tudo trunk and they inflict their own cultural influences and design aesthetics upon it. So that's where you get stuff like Tap Out. Tap Out, of course, heavily inspired by nu metal. I think there's like Skater Brat shit in there as well. Like, the mix that gives birth to the tap-out aesthetic is mixed martial arts, but then it's also the stuff that the music they were listening to, those guys were hanging out with. American surfer culture rather than Brazilian surfer culture, skater brat shit, new metal music, punk. That's how the tap-out look came to be. And then you've got other sports brands that go into it again with their own influences. So Rival, which is, I believe, a boxing, company. They make gloves and boxing shorts and I think shoes, maybe shoes. They made a really nice Valet Tudo short. If you watch the Rings 2001 USA tournaments, everyone's in Rival shorts because I think they got a sponsorship deal or something, and those shorts look great. Then there's other brands like Hunter and Adrenaline and Full Contact Fighter, which is of course a magazine as well, photographed by Joe Gold, I think. There's the Full Contact Fighter Instagram that posts great photos. There's all this stuff, and that gives birth to what a mixed martial artist looks like. And of course you have the next item, which comes from surfer culture, but only really comes about after a rule change. So, before, I think it's UFC 37, grabbing the shorts wasn't a foul. And then Mikey Burnett and Pat Miletich spend 30 minutes holding each other's shorts up against the cage, doing nothing. And so the rule change gets introduced that holding the shorts is now a foul. And this allows baggier shorts to become a thing. And because Americans are sexually repressed, they don't want to have their ass on display, so they come up with these things. Now these are the best worst shorts I've ever seen. These are the baggy board short style. No stretch, swimwear fabric. This has even got like that swimwear elastic that sticks to your skin so they don't fall down your ass. Nice sort of high leg, lots extra gussets so you've got extra flexibility. Well designed item. Does share the same cultural influences, in my opinion, aesthetically inferior to the Valet Tudo short. This is the way things are, but it does have a significant advantage over the Valet Tudo short coming into the time that it became popular. There's greater surface area. More surface area means you can put condom depot and dynamic fastener on there at the same time, which means you can get more sponsorship money. Now, this all brings us up to the unified MMA aesthetic of skulls, snakes, tribal tattoos. It's very unique. It's not necessarily nice to look at, but aesthetics are objective. And this is where we come to fashion critic Alistair, because I've been on a binge, because I've been trying to find the words to articulate why I don't like looking at the current Venom stuff and why I don't like looking at the current Reebok stuff. Well, the previous Reebok stuff. And it's because it's not part of the mixed martial arts subculture. It doesn't have those same influences. It's American sport culture rather than the culture that was developed inside mixed martial arts. It's outsider. It doesn't look right. And it doesn't matter how well designed the stuff is. To me, it will never be what a fighter wears. And when I see people outside of the UFC wearing the Venom shorts or the old Reebok shorts, it rubs me the wrong way. I look at them and I think, why are you wearing an emblem of your inability to earn money as a fighter? This is why you can't just fight on your local promotion anymore and be a journeyman. But also, there's the business side of it, but then there's the aesthetic side, which is, this doesn't look right. It's not what fighters wear. This is what people shackled to the UFC wear. So, 2014 rolls around. If you're to believe Dana, he sees Cody McKenzie wearing those basketball shorts that one time and decides to fuck over everybody and bring in the Reebok uniform deal. But also, they earned a fuckload of money and it helped them dress up the UFC to be sold onto WME and Endeavor. Now, I don't have access to this video anymore. It got purged in one of the many tweet deletions. but there's a great thing where all the UFC fighters are brought into the performance center, and a guy called Cajun Johnson stands up and is just like, this is fucking me. I used to earn, I don't remember the exact figure, and I sent him a message on the old Instagram. I was like, hey bro, I remember you speaking really well. I want to know exactly how much it was so I don't talk shit. But he was like, he was earning a good wage from his year as a regional fighter in Hawaii because of the sponsors that he could get for his shorts and for his banner. Completely wiped out. Gone. That destroyed a echelon of fighter. There's the up-and-comer, there's the middle, which is the journeyman, and then there's the cream of the crop, which is what used to be the UFC. That's gone, because people can't earn a living as a fighter anymore. Outside of, not even the UFC, earning a living as a fighter now is up here, comparatively. Whereas it used to be, you'd get to the UFC, and that was when you'd made it, and you could relax a little bit. You didn't have to work your part-time job anymore. There are guys in the UFC that are still working full-time. Stipe Miocic was fighting fires 48 hours before his UFC heavyweight title fight. It's fucked. So again, monetarily, outsiders came in, bought the aesthetic of the UFC, paid no attention to what that aesthetic was, and the biggest sin that I can find is brought in low-quality items that they didn't give a shit about. And this is where, again, we're stealing from, various fashion sources that Alistair's tried to listen to understand why I hate this shit. So, the subculture thing, that comes from a guy called Die Workwear on Twitter. He talks about suits and says why you should, dress decently. But that came down to, aesthetics are subjective. When you're wearing a fashionable item, you do, however, want to be speaking a particular language, and the language should be of the subculture that you're trying to attach yourself to. So, MMA fighters look like tap out. They don't have to, they can do that well and actually, have a fashion sense, but also that's the line of how they're supposed to look. Fucking Reebok comes in, not from that culture, and makes them look like off-brand Power Rangers in black and white and grey, and doesn't even spell their names right. So if you remember the Giblet Melendez fiasco, and I'm gonna put that up here, Giblet Melendez, they didn't give a shit. They didn't give a shit about who these fighters were or whatever. They couldn't be fucked spell checking a guy who just fought for the UFC title. They didn't give a fuck about that. And they were selling, names that are spelled wrong, and the clothes didn't fit because they weren't built for the sport. Everyone had to take a pair of scissors and cut up the side of the Reebok shorts to make them fit. Like that new high split gladiator short thing was a bodge. It was a workaround because Reebok brought in bullshit running shorts and said fight in those, and people couldn't throw high kicks. And that doesn't even talk about all the titties popping out. I think it's Valerie Loredo. It might be Valerie Loredo or Letourneau. One of those two, some French-Canadian chick, kicks right in the boob. Titty pops out, tries to shove it back in, and gets TKO'd at the same time. Because Reebok couldn't be fucked making clothes that work for fighting. They just grabbed their fucking activewear and said, wear it. We're gonna pay you less than you were earning before. So, to me, a fan of a particular time, this is not what a UFC fighter wears. This is not what an MMA fighter wears. This is what is being foisted upon us by the fucking capitalist hellscape, whatever, woke cuck Alistair here. This is why I don't like looking at it. And then Venom comes in, and they change their design. Venom used to fit the MMA aesthetic. It was fugly. It was awful to look at. I hated it, but it fit. You go into a gym, you see someone wearing Venom, you're like, aha! MMA gear. They made their shit look like Reebok did. And you just, no, why? Why would you change your whole deal? And only up until this year did they finally decide to do something mildly interesting and do some individual designs for guys. But even then, they're the most surface level shit. Kid Yamamoto and Akio Wiki and fucking Genki Sudo had their designs on their gear, and that is, miles above what fucking Venom's doing now. It's so surface level. This guy, Spanish guy, bulls. He's from Brazil, Aztec shit. She's from China, fucking dragons. It's so surface level. No one cares. No one gives a shit, and it's reflected in the clothing. The Reebok stuff didn't fit and wasn't fit for purpose and tore, and just like if you felt it for 20 seconds, it's just the sweatiest sub-dyed polyester you've ever seen, and Venom's is just the same. And while I have complaints about, the change in production on the previous MMA apparel rant, complaining about low-level guys coming in and sub-dyeing their stuff, at least they have the aesthetic right. At least it looks like MMA gear. So, what's this complaint all about? Buy Valet Tudo shorts from me. This is an ad. No, buy clothes that someone gave a shit when they were making them. And that's becoming harder and harder to find. And it's also becoming harder and harder to do. I care about the clothes that I make because I am one person in one room, this room that I am filming this in, that makes wrestling gear. My name is attached to everything that I make, and I get new customers from recommendations from people that I, have made gear for previously. I don't spend a cent on advertising. I cannot afford to make anything bad, because if I do, I fuck myself over in the future. Venom doesn't fucking care. They get their shit made the cheapest way they possibly can, or the cheapest way they can possibly get away with. And the issue there is, how much is the person who's making your Venom shorts getting paid? Probably not very much, and they're getting paid by the piece, not by the hour. So the incentives for that person, if that person sitting there in front of the sewing machine in Vietnam, Pakistan, China, wherever, with the cheap fucking labor, goes, I need to make as many of this one seam as possible in the next hour in order to make a livable wage to pay for my whatever, if they're making a livable wage. And then, not necessarily for Venom, I'm not casting any aspersions on them, but if we were to talk about some sort of brand named Shein, that person isn't getting paid. That person is going, I need to make this many shorts this hour, otherwise I'm not getting fed and I am getting tased by my brutal overlord. How quality is the item that you're going to get from that person whose only thought is, I need to make as many of these as quickly as possible? It can't be good. But the very definition of the way that whole situation of them making it is set up is they have to do a bad job in order to eat. So, again, this isn't, we shouldn't buy from X because think of the human cost of it. You probably should do that. That is a good thing to do, in my opinion. However, you need to think about it as the consumer of what you're buying. And if you are buying an item from Venom, Reebok, anywhere else big, they no longer care because they can just spend the money to advertise to get on board more customers. They can spend the money to force the UFC to make them wear it. Now, we'll go back to the local comp. Why do I hate that they have MMA uniforms? Because they don't get the aesthetic right. Because they're copying what the UFC did, so they're copying the Reebok aesthetic, which isn't the MMA aesthetic, it is the aesthetic that they brought in from American sports. It's all fucking diagonal lines and graphics and shit that you'd see on Monday Night Football. Not what you're supposed to look at when you're looking at MMA. If you are going to enforce a fighting uniform, pay the guys to wear it, at least equal to what they get for their sponsors, please, because most low-level MMA fighters ain't making shit. And then once you've done that, You are a martial artist if you're running one of these organizations at a low level, hopefully, or at least you know one. Get them, ask them like their favorite MMA look, and then use that. Don't just grab whatever the UFC is doing, because they're running on a different level to you. They are trying to wipe everything out that isn't the UFC. Like I talked about before, where it used to be the upper echelon was the UFC, that has slid down while the middle ground has been taken out. You get guys turning up who are 4-2 or 4-0, who haven't been tested, who aren't actual prospects yet. They're just local guys who have got a few wins together and then they show up on the UFC. It's not how it was supposed to work, but it has to, because they need to fill however many ESPN nights. Have I covered everything I needed to say? Where did I steal the quality is care from? That's from Bliss Foster. You're probably not interested in him, but he's a fashion guy. I stole that from him. Dye Workwear, he talks about suits on Twitter. I stole the fucking subculture thing from him. Very simply, don't buy Reebok. Don't buy Venom. They've got enough money. And if you want to look like an actual fighter, go out and get something decent. Something that got made by somebody who gave a shit about the gear that they were making. Which is harder to find because, you know, your local MMA fighter isn't going and finding a factory that does Vale Tudo shorts. They're going to a dropshipper guy in Pakistan and sending them the sub-dye shit. But still, you know, they actually give a fuck a little bit. Hopefully. That's about it. Buy quality gear. Subscribe and all that bullshit. I make Vale Tudo shorts. Buy some from me. See you later.